Aye, Shane.
Call this meeting to order. This is a Livingston Parish Ordinance Committee meeting. Today is Thursday, November the 10th, 2022. It's about 5 minutes after 5. All right, ready for the roll call?
Mr. Grayling-House, Mr. Mack,
Here.
Mr. Talbert,
Here.
Mr. Ard.
Here.
Here. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started here. Old business on the agenda tonight, 3A, is amend Section 100-5 penalty for violations of this chapter. It's got Mr. Chris Moody's name by it. We talked about this in the last Ordinance Committee meeting. I can't remember the action we agreed to take in the last meeting, but I know that we did decide to talk about this a little bit further. All right. The proposed change, or requested change, basically says that the Director of Public Works is authorized, this would be in addition to the existing ordinance, okay? But it basically says the Director of Public Works is authorized to engage ununiformed code enforcement officers to issue court summons to offenders to appear in district court. Said officers may or may not be deputized by the sheriff. Code enforcement officers shall also deliver stop work orders and cease and desist letters and have the authority to enter private property to enforce the land development code. Okay, just kind of want to open up the floor for discussion. I don't want to get out of line here, but I think Gary had some information. He kind of talked through this last time. I'll be honest with you. I want to look into this further. I just kind of want to make sure that that we're making the right decision here when it comes to this. I'm for following the rules. I'm for treating people the same and for everybody having to follow the same rules, right? And everybody being treated fair, okay? But I'll be honest with you, the way I read this, I got some concerns about it. And the concerns I have basically is that, I wouldn't want somebody to basically be clearing their property, not subject to a development or anything like that, and then, parish official walk out there and require them to stop work. My thought is if it's a work order written and a work order is being completed, right, then the supervisor of the Department of Public Works would have the ability to stop that work. And so that process already exists. And we're going to open up the floor to others that can maybe help better explain the intent of this modifying the ordinance here. But Gary, can you kind of explain why we why we felt the need to make this modification, or maybe
you want
Jeff?
to read this, or you want me to read
Well,
this?
I mean, you can read. I want to clarify something. We're not talking about work orders issued by the Department of Public Works. What
Okay.
we're talking about is for them to deliver stop work orders, which is for a code enforcement officer if there's a violation of parish ordinance to go stop someone. We're not talking about arbitrarily stopping somebody from clearing their land unless they're violating a particular parish ordinance with respect to the work they're doing. So it's not about, the stop work order is not about stopping DPW work orders. The stop work order is issued to the individual who's doing work, or a cease and desist letter depending on what is appropriate at the given time. This was set forth, this was a request by the Department of Public Works and a request by those individuals who are in the compliance department. And it was investigated and written by our parish attorney to give them the ability to do their job. So there's a letter from Mr. Myers, who is the compliance enforcement, and a letter from Sandy with an explanation from Mr. DiGirolamo, along with Mr. Moody's addition to the current ordinance as it exists. So you want to talk about what those letters say?
I'll read what he wrote. This is, let's see, this is basically from Brian here. It said, Sam asked him to reach out and give us this explanation. It says, as it stands now, when compliance has reached the point when dealing with a violator of parish ordinances that it becomes necessary to take legal action, we are required to prepare a warrant, have that warrant signed by a judge, and then turn it over to the sheriff's office to have the offender issued a summons to appear in court. As you can imagine, it takes a lot of extra time and effort to accomplish. The introduction of this ordinance seeks to cut down on time and red tape involved in this process by allowing compliance officers to directly issue any summons, cease and desist, stop work order, etc. to the offender, and giving them the authority to enforce provisions of the Land Development Code that may require such action be taken. We have reached out to the sheriff's office and informed them of our intent, and as of this email, we have received no negative input regarding this issue.
And that's from us.
That's from
Planning
Brian
Director
Myers.
Brian Myers, Planning Department Compliance
Yeah.
Enforcement Officer.
And Mr. Sam had asked him to send that to us to basically explain what their intent is here. And I talked to Mr. Sam today some about it. He's actually driving home from vacation. And I feel seems like the sheriff's office kind of feels like it would actually help them out a little bit. So instead of us having one of our deputies having to go chase somebody down because they're not digging a hole right, we can let our compliance officer do it.
Okay.
And we keep our deputy on the street.
That's a good point. Is there any examples? Could anybody give an example of where this might be necessary?
Okay, so for example, clearing and grubbing is defined as anything, grubbing is defined as anything removing 8 inches or smaller. And certain clearing and grubbing cannot be done without a permit. You got to have your permit based on stormwater runoff and some other stuff, with dirt leaving the property, or somebody filling in a drainage ditch, changing the contour of the current, outlook of the property, the way the property is supposed to, be draining. And given that situation, the time frame involved in resolving that issue now, typically the work is done before we can even attempt to make the, to get all the process, get the warrant drawn up, get the judge to sign it, get to the sheriff's office, have the summons for court issued. We're not talking about getting them stopped. We're talking about having a summons to come to court to talk about why we should or should not be able to stop them. And by that time, the damage is done and everything's been finished. And then you got to go through the civil process of trying to get them to undo what is done. So all they're trying to do is create a situation if somebody starts doing something outside the current laws that exist within the parish. And it's mainly when you're harming your neighbor, and so it's not something that they're going to take lightly. It's something that's designed in such a manner that will allow them to more readily take care of individuals in the parish who are being harmed by their neighbor doing some, I want to use the word, quote, illegal, but it's not, I don't want to say illegal in the fact that, but it's work outside the ordinances as they exist. And so I think that given all parties that are involved in this process, they've all asked for this particular ordinance. And the current people that are involved, i.e. the judges, sheriff's office, and those individuals that have to assist us, they have no problem, it appears, with us passing this ordinance forward. And then, introducing it tonight. If there's some issue, then they can come comment, at our meeting in December. But I think if we move forward with this, then, you know, we can start the first of the year off in a situation that if somebody's doing something that's harming, you know, one of your constituents, one of my constituents, or you know, that enforcement can go in and do, you know, compliance can go in and take care of the problem. And then if compliance is wrong, then, you know, there's legal action that the other people can take. We're just trying to create a situation that stops the negative impact on current residents in the parish by somebody else operating outside the ordinance. And that's why I would like to offer a positive recommendation from this committee for an introduction of this ordinance.
I will add that
Thanks for explaining that. Go ahead.
both of our compliance officers are former police officers, so they have been trained how to deal with the public, basically.
Appreciate that, too. Okay. Are you thinking that this is more related to, like, if somebody goes before planning and they have a proposed development and they're in the process of developing property per the ordinances or the code, and maybe they're in violation, and then maybe they need to stop that? I mean, I was just,
It could very.
I mean, we're not talking about, like, if people just have 10 acres and they want to clear their 10 acres. I mean, I don't know of no ordinance, but I mean, I don't know every single written ordinance. I mean, if they want to just cut trees and grind some stumps or something, they wouldn't be in no type of violation.
You still got to control, well, I mean, that might not be in violation. However, people go to their property and start moving dirt around and change the contours. I mean, I know I've had the complaints, I'm sure every councilman's had the complaints where the neighbor says, you know, this guy, you know, the natural drainage was here, and they came in and hauled in 25 loads of dirt, changed the natural drainage of the property, and now I'm being flooded. So, I mean, this is a particular instance where that gives the compliance department the ability to stop that before it gets to that point. And I think that is very important, because just because you own 10 acres doesn't give you the ability to fill a ditch in the middle of it and move the water some other direction. And I think those, if you're going to find out, are going to be some of the biggest issues that they face. And you know, is that people go in and start changing the contour of land and moving water around without, you know, the proper studies or permits or whatever necessary. And I think that's what they're looking at doing. And so, I mean, I think that, absolutely, somebody that wants to just do some work on their land could be impacted by this, but if they're negatively impacting their neighbor, then they should be able to do it.
They should be able to stop them if they're, I mean, if the neighbor calls and says, hey, he's out here moving all this stuff around and it's flooding me, I mean, we should be able to go out there and stop them and say, hold up, we got to come up with a way to solve this.
But I mean, I think there's a motion on the floor. I don't know if there's been a second yet.
I'll second it. I absolutely.
Got a motion and a second to move forward with this. Is there any discussion from anybody in the audience about this? Come on up and state your name and.
Brian Clemens, Robbie Lee Drive. My only concern is that it says they may or may not be deputized. Livingston Parish residents are somewhat independent. And I think if someone heads out to the property and wants to tell someone, stop what you're doing right now, and they're not deputized, you could be looking at a situation. Both of these guys, Glenn and Brian, both are former police officers, as you say, from Baton Rouge. They have a lot of experience. I don't see a problem with mandating that at least the supervisor of the compliance department be deputized. The people beneath him may not necessarily be so. But I think it'd be a good idea to have at least one person in that department be deputized.
I think that's going to be a decision of the sheriff right
The
there.
sheriff, I mean, we can't require that, you know, somebody be deputized if the sheriff doesn't want to deputize them. I mean, so, you know, if we could very well write this ordinance and take all the teeth out of it if the sheriff's not comfortable with deputizing that particular individual. I think the reason this ordinance exists is so that, you know, they have the law is within their, you know, the law supports them to do this now. It's just the process is long and drawn out. So consequently, they're going to do all the investigation. They're going to have made contact with the people before. All they're trying to do is you know, they're not going to right off the bat on the first visit, you know, do this. This has always been a process that they've gone through. They're just trying to, shortcut the back end of this deal. They're going to still try to do the negotiations and work with people and inform them. But you're right, that this is still the free state of Livingston. I don't care what anybody says. And so consequently, there are individuals that feel like this is my land. I can do what the heck I want to with it. And to be honest with you, you can to a certain extent as long as you don't negatively impact your neighbor. And so I think that's where we get to in a civilized society, that you can do what rights you have as long as your rights don't infringe upon somebody else's rights. And so I think the Constitution kind of allows for that. So I don't think what we're doing is anything outside what our founding fathers, anticipated, back in the day when they wrote the Constitution, which is a document that has survived, a long time, and I know it's being challenged today over and over, but it's still surviving. And I think that given this situation, I think that we need to allow our employees to have the ability to do what they need to do their job. And so that's why I think the positive recommendation from this council to from this ordinance committee to the council. And then look, we got 3 or 4 weeks before that ordinance would actually be heard. So, if the judges have a problem, or the sheriff's department has a problem, and that we'll have time to address that. But I think we need to move forward at this point in time. We can talk
I
it
agree
to
with that. I
death.
was just
And we're
recommending.
not arresting anybody.
I was just
Yeah.
suggesting perhaps a little bit more teeth might be.
Well, and I think Brian, I understand, and I don't discount what you're saying, but at the same time, Mr. Ard's an elected official, Sheriff Ard's an elected official who has some liability if he starts deputizing whoever, and so sometimes he wants to know who those individuals are, and if we say that you've got to that somebody within this department's got to be deputized or the supervisor, and Sheriff Ard's not comfortable with that, then we take the teeth out of the ordinance that we put forth. And I just think, look, we have individuals that are very well suited to deal with the public, and I think we've just got to trust them to be able to do their job, and that's why I think that this is.
Brian and Glenn are both good men.
Right.
And they're very reasonable as you talk to.
Right, and so I think, and look.
I'm just concerned about the free state of
Well,
Livingston.
I mean,
as you
look,
said.
that happens, and those guys are intelligent people, and they will have dealt with these individuals before, and they will have a gut feeling before they go try to do this, what the situation is. And if it's a situation where they feel like that it's not going to go well, they're not going to go put themselves in danger.
They're going to actually bring a deputy with them.
They could actually call a deputy
Yeah,
to come
they
with
gonna
them.
get a real
That's not a
deputy.
problem. I mean, we're not telling them, you can't bring somebody. We're not asking them to put themselves in danger. I mean, and I know, in certain situations, if you're going to deal with somebody, what you know before you start what you think the feedback's going to be. And if you think the feedback's not going to be something that you want to deal with it in the future, then take those individuals who have the ability to help you in that situation. And we're not limiting to them. We're just giving them the opportunity to move forward and shortcut some of the deals. And if your neighbor's doing it to you, you would love for this ordinance to be in place. But if you're doing it to somebody else, then hell, I don't want it. But it's like I don't want anybody to tell me what I can't do with my property, but I want to be able to tell them what they can't do with theirs. And so it's it's the gorilla in the corner that we come to all the time. And so I think that's just I think this is.
Well, I think the ordinance is necessary. I was just advocating that we put as much teeth as possible for those officers.
And we don't disagree with you, but I think
going.
if we require that and we can't put that together, then the ordinance is mute.
Maybe we could recommend that they should seek
We could, I mean,
better cooperation
And
with the
I think that's something that just is common sense. It doesn't have to be put in the law. I think that's just one of those things.
And I think this is just a step. I mean, you might get to the point where that has to happen.
You know how the law constantly evolves, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, I mean, anybody else? Derek, did you have something you wanted to say?
Pretty much covered it. I want to make sure that there is a procedure, written down that everybody can follow, knowing if you got 7 days of compliance or something like that to get back in compliance or something like that. We have some of that in other parishes. I think a compliance officer with some teeth is a good thing, because you're dealing anything from an MS4 to somebody filling in a ditch to having some issues. I also think the compliance officer should be allowed to be called upon by the drainage district, because those are the experts in compliance. So if there's an issue and the drainage district's having an issue as well, they can call the compliance officer in as well. Of course, they there to enforce all laws, of course.
Right.
So just make sure that those guys have that ability to call in on them too.
Well, I think that the drainage district, if they've got a problem now that they can't deal with, they have the ability to call the compliance
They
department
can call
and
Sam,
see,
so,
and help them. And so this will help. If Gravity 1's got a problem, or Gravity 2's got a problem, or Gravity 5's got a problem, or Gravity, what is it, 8? They have the ability to reach out to compliance officer now, and it'll actually help them, resolve some of the issues that they have.
And not only that, the compliance officers, that's just more eyes out there. They
Right.
can call in and make sure that, for that, so.
And Derek, there is no written process now of how it works, but they typically and have always, gone out and
They've always tried to work with
made
you.
contact and say, look, the
I'll be
law
back
said-
in 3 days, make sure this is resolved. We actually deal with that a good bit, working with those guys from both sides and just trying to make sure.
You've seen it. You've seen it as quality representing Gravity 1. You've seen situations where you go to somebody and talk to them, and they give you the
I'm not doing it, yeah. That
yeah,
kind
and
of
so
stuff,
you're gonna let those guys do their let them do their job, and then when they've hit that stone wall and they felt like they've done all they can do, then this is just allows them to stop the process and stop the harm. That's,
Usually the stop
ask a
works
question.
come with,
So-
required you to show up at a certain time, so.
So, Eric, can you give a couple of examples what you're talking about? I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking as y'all talk. I mean, I guess if you had a dedicated drainage servitude, right, that the Gravity Drainage District maintained, well, then, of course, you can't go out there and fill that in, right? It's a dedicated drainage servitude. It's been maintained by Gravity Drainage District. If somebody's out there, rerouting that, then, yeah, that's an issue. It needs to be addressed. But, I mean, say, for instance, you're in the flood zone X area, and, I mean, you want to dig a ditch across your property. I mean, you shouldn't be in violation. I mean, I don't really feel like any parish official should
No
be able to come
ordinance
out there and
against
tell you you
that.
can't dig a ditch across your property.
Yeah, so there's no ordinance against that. Shane, where I've seen where compliance stuff comes into fact is with developments, MS4 permits, where a lot of silt's allowed to leave the property, things like that, when you have a swept plan in place and, you're silting up natural ditches, which violation, I've been on it where a couple things. One is, I'm trying to think of some examples. Cleared before the drainage impact study. They had to stop, try to get the drainage impact study completed and approved before they can continue clearing. That's been an issue. And not warrants and things like that, but things that we've worked with the parish to get through. Another one was they didn't like the construction wasn't up to par on a certain development. They wanted it stopped so they can have a conversation about it. If again, these didn't go all the way to warrants and all that kind of stuff, but it was, hey, y'all need to stop what y'all are doing. Let us have a conversation. So that would it could be at that level. If they wouldn't have stopped, at that level could come in. So that's mainly what I've seen on those kind of areas. As far as an individual homeowner or an individual lot owner, I haven't noticed any of that kind of stuff. It's more like dealing with developments and giving them some teeth.
Okay. You ready?
yeah.
Okay. I guess we'll call for the vote to, I guess, send a positive recommendation to the council and put this on the next council agenda.
Mr. Girlinghouse, Mr. Mack,
Yeah.
Mr. Talbert.
Yes.
Mr. Ard.
Yes.
Hey, let's figure out what the next item is.
Wording on animal funding.
Amend wording of animal control funding. Okay, so we talked, I think everybody understands there's a need for animal control in Livingston Parish. We currently, I mean, we have some animal control, but it's limited. It's very, very much limited on what we can and can't do. And so we talked about if we were to modify the wording, I think actually, I'm trying to find it, but basically I think Gary's more familiar with this too, to be quite honest with you. Where is this written at?
It's just go to the last page. Right there, just that yellow part. So basically, a few meetings ago, 2 meetings ago, Mr. Latt was talking about a concern he had with respect to, expanding animal control. And I just said, look, we've got a perfectly good ordinance. The problem is Article 3 says that the provision of this ordinance shall take effect only upon funding being appropriated for implementation and notice thereof published in the official journal of the parish of Livingston. And I just said, there's no need for us to spend a lot of time trying to rewrite an ordinance. We got an ordinance in place. The problem is we can't implement it because we don't have it funded. However, we could amend the ordinance to take out the funding, trigger, and then the ordinance would actually be in place. It'd be the administration's problem about how to figure out how to fund it. I mean, it was kind of a point that we've got an ordinance. We just got to figure out how to fund it, or we just got to eliminate the provision that stops it from being implemented and let the administration have to figure out how to fund it. We got a budget. I don't think there's any room in the budget. I don't think there's any money in there, but, I just was letting Mr.
What ordinance is it that needs to be modified, Gary?
So basically, the current ordinance that exists that allows for animal control, which is, heck, I don't know. Do y'all know the ordinance number? Article 4.
I have the whole article.
Yeah, Article 4 is the ordinance that outlines how animal control will be operated. But in Article 4, one of the parts of it says that it doesn't, they passed this great ordinance, but we can't implement it because it's not funded.
Okay,
So in lieu of us spending a ton of time trying to rewrite something that previous councils have worked out and have written a great ordinance, if we're serious about it, take out the roadblock and then it'll trigger.
Okay.
I think Miss Myers is sitting out there going, y'all are crazy. but
Hold up, Randy. Let's let Randy sit.
I'm just saying that was one way to do it if we wanted to do it.
Randy Delat, Councilman District 8. Gary's correct, I guess, in interpretation. I don't have it right in front of me, but Article 4 says that the animal control will take into effect the ordinance when we fund it. Well, we're going to have to fund it or take that out, one of the two, or it's never going to come into effect. Some of the things we have, believe it or not, is people get arrested and they leave their animals at home. And if it's a dog, they're going to pick it up and they'll bring it to the control and the sheriff deputies will or whatever. But if it's cats or any other kind of animal, they won't do none of those things. And there was an incident a couple of weeks ago where a guy got arrested and he had 23 cats. Most of them was inside, but nobody was feeding and watering them. So after the stink in the neighborhood, they opened the door and that's what they found. Well, the sheriff's department still didn't have a way to get those cats because there's no leash law on the cats. And that's what brought this to my attention. Then since that time, there's been a time or two a neighbor says, cats is all over on my car and there's no law that says my neighbor has to take care of his cat. And that's what I was interested in. And Gary said that in the past that they worked a previous administration or previous councilman or what had worked on animal control, and the mechanism to kick it in was it has to be funded. And so when I looked to see Article 4, and it's highlighted in yellow, you can see it, the wording on it, the animal control really doesn't have to, we don't have to enforce it until we fund it, I guess is what we're saying. So, and if you don't mind, I'm going to read it. It says, and it's 3, not 4, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's 3.
Be it further ordained, the provisions of this ordinance shall take effect only upon funding being appropriated for the implementation and notice thereof published in the official journal of the parish of Livingston. So I want to move forward. I want to get the animal control funded or whatever we have to do to provide the service for these people.
So I'm just asking here, so would y'all agree that the action that we would prefer to take or introduce is just to remove the Article 3 wording completely? I'm just asking here.
Well, I mean, if you want to implement this ordinance and obviously the administration doesn't feel that there's money in the budget to fund it, so consequently they've never budgeted to do it. But if you remove that trigger, I mean, if you remove that roadblock for this ordinance to come into effect, then obviously, it would come into effect. What it would do to the budget and what it would do to other services parish provide, we'd have to ask the budget expert to tell us how that would work. But I mean, I'm just saying if you want to do it, that's how you do it. I'm not necessarily, I'm in favor of it. I'm just saying that's how you would do it. I think Ms. Myers would have to come speak to us about what the impact would be, but.
I mean, I think the key is funding, whether it's in there or out of there, it's still funding.
Right.
Where's the funds coming from?
The difference is right now, the way the ordinance is written, until it's funded, it's sitting on the back burner.
Yeah, and it says published in the official journal.
If we take that part of the ordinance out, then the ordinance becomes law. How the ordinance is implemented then becomes an issue for the administration, and how it's funded becomes an issue for the administration. I mean, I don't know what the impact would be to the budget. I have no idea. I don't have any idea what it costs to run animal control. I don't have any idea. I'm just offering you, I'm just saying that before we spend a lot of time working on an ordinance, we got an ordinance, we just got to figure out how to make it work.
If we take out the wording of Article 3 and we introduce it, I guess we talk about it over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We see how it affects the budget. We figure out if the council wants to move forward.
Well, I mean, I guess my question is isn't it the legislative body to figure out a way to fund it? A way to create the funds to, I mean, we're the one that
I don't know.
proposes taxes, that brings up how are we going to fund things?
I'm just thinking out loud here, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn, and we're going to get to let Randy comment, but one method that comes to my mind and is, we have more money today than we certainly have in the past when it comes to maintaining roads and overlaying roads. And to me, the general fund was used for a lot of that in the past. Maybe you could just, designate a certain amount of money out of the general fund to fund animal control, and it's funded if you remove these words, and we move forward, and we budget and we do what we can as a parish to provide some service. I don't know, that's just a method. I guess that's what we talk about over the next 2 to 3 weeks. I mean, Randy, what was you going to say?
Okay, basically almost the same thing, and I was going to maybe answer Jeff, or Jeff's correct, it is a legislative function, but if it's not in there, they don't have to propose it. And then you got line item veto, so that becomes a problem. So my suggestion, or what I would like to see, is the wording come out, so they'd have to at least propose it, and then we as a legislative body, we have to decide to say, okay, we have to move this money over here. Now, is it worth it going into the animal control or not? Is that worth it? Is it, but until they propose it, it never comes up, you see.
Randy, I think the issue is, and this is the only drawback to what you're saying that I want to talk about, is that if we take this out before we've had the discussion about how much it costs and where the money might come from, then it's law, and it has to be implemented this way. And so my concern is, I guess we're at the 9th hour. The budget's going to be introduced tonight. We're going to vote on it in 3 or 4 weeks. So you can't very well pass a law that would change the budget by $1 or $2 million, whatever it costs to implement animal control, without knowing before you do that if the budget is capable of doing it. And so I'm not trying to, I guess what I'm saying is that probably the timing of this is probably not really great right now, because if we do that as proposed and we take 3 out and then it becomes law, then we've got to pass that. We'll pass that the same day we're trying to pass the budget. And the budget, if we pass that before we pass the budget, then the budget can't even be passed as introduced, because it needs to be funded, animal control needs to be funded. So, I think I think the timing of this probably isn't the best in the world. I don't know if the timing ever gets better.
I agree with the statement.
I
I agree with the statement on the timing. I don't think you're going to be able to put it in this budget because of the timing. I agree with that statement. But this is my 3rd year, and I've been talking about animal control. We ain't no further. So somewheres we have to start.
So I think probably this is just my thought, and because I don't have an idea what it costs. Ms. Myers might be able to talk about that and let us know. However, I think in being fair to the administration and fair to everybody, that before we go pulling 3 out, we really need to look for a funding source or see if dollars are available. And so, whether we propose some alternate funding method that the public needs to vote on or not vote on. I just think that I'm pretty confident in looking at this document as I saw it, the first introduction, or the first one we saw, and the second one we saw, and this being the final one, which I haven't looked at yet today. I don't know that there's any place to go move that kind of money around, so, but.
It would be nice to have a estimate, like you said, or what it costs, but keep in mind, the parish used to have animal control when we had way less money, like Mr. Mack said, and most parishes do have animal control, and we put an undue a burden on the citizens who have to do without animal control, and then the sheriff has unnecessary nuisance calls. They can be out there enforcing law and safety, and they get those calls, and sometimes they can do something, sometimes they can't. It's just like the cats. There's nothing they can do there.
And the shame of it is there was a prior to I think 3 councils ago, when there was a rollback of some taxes that the public voted it down based on some comments made by some councilmen, and they rolled the number back and it got approved. There were some dollars in there that could have been diverted, for public, health that could have helped take care of some of that. And now we're looking at that fund barely being able to take care of the stuff it's supposed to take care of. So that particular situation created a hardship. And so, maybe the public needs that is that renewal coming up again pretty soon, or is it, how long was that renewal for? Do you remember?
I think once it's rolled.
On a vote, you could roll it. I mean, they proved that at a reduction, we could present it at a.
I don't think that's anytime soon.
It's not anytime soon. Okay. I mean, but let's face it, animal control, as it's written in this ordinance, knowing what I've looked at the budget, now Ms. Jennifer might have some expertise that I don't, I didn't see it, but without going to the public and asking them whether they actually want animal control or not, I don't think that this animal control ordinance as it exists, could be funded. I just made the comment, that's a way to move forward if you wanted to. But I really think it would be detrimental to other services this parish provides if we tried to do that.
But we as a body, as a whole, need to make that decision, and we don't get a chance to make that decision because it's never in the budget. You know what I'm saying? It's never being proposed. If we continue doing what we're doing, that means we're doing nothing, and we've got the same problem.
Well, Randy, I think, and look, I understand what you're saying, but and I think we're gonna I would hope Ms. Myers will make a comment about that in a second. But I do believe that if this council is really interested in animal control, that they find a funding mechanism outside of the current budget to try to provide that. Because, and Ms. Myers can speak to what it would cost from current services that we provide, how they would be impacted if we did that. That's all I'm saying.
It used to be $1.2 million when we had a $16 million budget. Now we got a $80-some million budget. I don't know what it would cost, but it was 1.2 in the past. We only had 4 employees and 2 trucks in the past. It may take more to do that now. I don't know, but I do know that if we don't do anything at all, some kind of way we got to get something moving. When we adopt the budget, you can't amend it unless you got money coming in that was, that you didn't. So I agree with the thing. It's too early. Too late now with the two weeks notice that I agree with that, but I don't want to wait a whole nother year. And if we say and removing that would pin us down, then we got to come up with another option. We got to do something temporarily for emergencies. It don't have to be all the time, at least for emergencies, for those situations. My phone's ringing off the hook. I'm calling Channel 2. I'm calling Channel 9. All I can tell them is call, and they do call. But it is a service that our people need, that the citizens need, and that's a service we should provide. Most parishes provide those things, So anyway, thank you.
Appreciate everybody. Any more comments on that before we move on?
If you would like me to speak, I shall.
Well, just give us an idea, Jennifer, like what.
Absolutely. So when Mr. Layton took office in 2012, absolutely. He did have Ms. Maurice Durbin help us to do a study of surrounding parishes, plus her experience running the Denham Springs Animal Shelter. The projections at the time, Mr. Delatte was correct, were 1.2 million for just dog and cat operations, full-scale open operations for animal control in 2012. So as you can imagine with the inflation, I don't know what it would cost today. I'm only, going by the 1.2 million in 2012 or 13, whenever we had the study. So the issue that you run into is without a defined funding mechanism, which the council would have to create, from the public, I don't know that there is any other source of revenue for animal control. So based upon just that 1.2 million annual operations budget, if you look in the general fund is making next year projected to clear $1.1 million. And that's from all of our tax revenue that comes into the general fund. That is the only unrestricted revenue we have. And that's after paying out all of our mandated cost. So that's the coroner's office, the district attorney's office, our planning department, our permit department, all of those things that the state law says we have to pay. Now, this year alone, we have increased about $670,000 in those mandated costs because the cost of the DA's office has gone up, which the revised statute says we have to supply those. The registrar of voters' office costs have gone up. The coroner's office costs have gone up. So we could put it, let's say it only cost $1.2 million in today's dollars to open an up full bore operation. We're now losing money each year in the general fund, and at some point the fund balance that we have in the general fund will be gone. And then you've used up all of your money, every dollar extra that you have for animal control, and you have nothing else to go into if the DA's costs go up, if the registrar of voters costs go up, if things that we are mandated by the state to pay for increase. The coroner's office expenses are just through the roof these days with the mental health issues that are just arising. They have to respond to those calls. We have to pay for that. If you'll look at your animal shelter budget, I'm really excited that we have found ways to fund the bare minimum operations that we have, just answering those calls for dogs, like arrests, the bare minimum stuff that the animal shelter does now. It costs us anywhere from, it's about average $250,000 a year just to do that bare minimum operation over there. We had paid for it by property sales when we entered into the contract with Civic Source, and I think we did some pretty decent sales at first with the adjudicated property, and we put about $400,000 in there, and that bought us a few years. And bingo funds buys us a few $1,000s every year, and most recently the interest generated off of the ARPA funds can be used at our discretion, and we're putting those to fund the animal shelter. So if you'll look at the current budget that I gave you today, at the end of next year we'll have about $500,000, which will only get us through 2 more years of bare minimum operation. So that's what we're looking at as far as funding. We are definitely for animal control. We just need a funding source. And I want to say we went twice to the public and asked them to fund animal control, and it was a no. So unless anybody has any great ideas, I don't know what to do outside of, we did get a grant recently that is actually generated from ARPA that will do, they'll give us $50,000 this year and $50,000 next year. We're going to put that into animal shelter also as soon as we receive it, just to try to shore that up so we can continue with bare minimum operations as the ordinance reads now. So, anything else y'all want to know?
That's it.
Sorry,
that's
that's
what I know.
not better news. So.
No, I don't think it's anything anybody didn't already know.
Basically, we're saying we don't have any extra money in the general fund to transfer over. Okay. Go ahead, Randy.
Okay, we can say that, guys, but then we got to do something about it. We cannot go and ask the people for more money after we just asked them for another 1 cent not long ago. We're fixing to raise the millage again. That's coming up. We need to provide our services with the money we have. So we need to look at it. They need to propose us a budget 6 months down the road or whatever, what that's going to cost. So we could continue to look at the budget and scrub it where we can scrub it at and get those monies. Because like I said, everybody else is facing money problems too. So thank you.
Appreciate that. Hey, Tracy. Okay. That's all we got for old business, new business. Discuss zoning definitions, classifications, and utilizing new online zoning maps. Okay, so I just want to put the zoning maps, I just want to discuss that real quick. Open up the floor for some discussion on that and see what your guys' ideas are. So, you know, I guess in some council districts, it's easy to determine how land is classified with the current maps that are on the Livingston Parish Council website, you know, the PDFs. I ran into some issues in my area where it was pretty difficult to determine how certain parcels of property were classified, and it's really important, you know, to get that right. So, you know, the plan all along was to, I guess you could say, use the ARCIS maps that the assessor's office has, to where you can, you know, go into that map online and, you know, and zoom in and punch in maybe your address or your parcel number, and it would populate, and it would be extremely specific on exactly how your land was classified. And those current maps, you know, the map exists today. From what I understand, they have it. You know, they completed it. It's ready. It's kind of being trialed at the moment. I looked at it today, and I like it. I haven't looked at it enough to know if it's got problems or not, but it appears to be the exact map that the assessor's office uses, that has all the parcels on it, and you click on it, and you know, you punch in your address, and it takes you right to the parcel, and you click on it, and it tells you exactly how it's classified, and I really like it. It's got the legends and the color codes and all this type of stuff. So I guess I made a couple of promises to my people out there that I represent, that, you know, we wouldn't move forward with District 9 until we were able to utilize these maps. So I'm just asking, what is y'all's vision on implementing these maps and using these maps? I'm talking as far as Plan Commission, everybody else. Whenever somebody wants to develop their property, or they want to reclassify, or, you know, go through the process, you know, are we ready to implement these new maps? Has anybody had a chance to look at those new maps? I know they just got completed a week or two ago, maybe 3. But I mean, I would like to go ahead and maybe try to utilize those new maps before the end of the year. I thought maybe that when you go to the Planning Commission for a development or something, you know, they'd be able to just click on it right there and pull it up real quick. And I mean, maybe we need to get the folks that developed the map, you know, maybe Alvin and them group, to come up here and kind of talk about it when we go to introduce it or something. I mean, I don't know. How, what's the plan there?
Well, I think you kind of, if you don't have an idea of how you want to do it already, like, I guess mine's simpler because a large portion of it was already zoned, and then that even makes it simpler for the areas outlying, because you just kind of follow the path that you have. I would, I mean, I'm sure you just basically started with your municipalities.
Mine's all zoned, you're right. Mine, it's all done, it's just...
You talking about the changes?
No, mine's like completely ready. It's just the PDF, when you go to look at it, you know, the roads wasn't on there, and you couldn't tell exactly what parcel was classified what. But the new map, you can. I mean, you can. Gary, have you had a chance to look at it?
So Shane, I think what...
I'm just wanting to utilize the new map.
I don't want to speak out, I don't want to speak for what Shane's trying to say, but I think that we need to figure out what is the official map. You know what I'm talking about? And I think Shane's wanting to say, are we going to utilize the map out of the assessor's office, the portal? You know, are we going to use the portal as the official map, or are we going to use these paper drawn maps as the official map? And I think that, you know, we need to figure out the way the ordinance is written. You know, I don't know that we define it exactly.
We just need to change that to say, you know, this is the official map.
The portal's the official map.
Yeah.
And then
I agree with you 100%.
But we got to make sure. There have been some maps that have already been adopted as being the map, so we need to make sure that that map as adopted matches the portal as it exists today. And so that we can come back and when we need to make changes in the future, you know, that the portal will be the official map. And then, you know, we'll have to note, there had to be some way that, you know, since Mr. Taylor's office runs the portal, there's got to be some way to you know, that the the change, you know, that Mr. Taylor might make on that portal comes through the council. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think we got to get Mr. Moody, to figure out how we structure that ordinance and how we go about the implementation of that. But I think what Shane's trying to say is he wants the portal to be the official map. And that way anybody can pull it up and they can see their particular parcel of land and know that.
Oh, I absolutely agree with that.
But if you're worried about changes in the map over time, you could just create, just as an idea, do a yearly thing where you yearly look at it and each councilman for their district, you know, whether it's us or people who follow us in this office, yearly can look at it, look at the changes that have occurred over that 365-day period, and then you know, ratify that map. You can do that on a yearly basis.
Yeah, let's get some discussion. Randy, you want to come up? We're going to get you first.
I agree with what you're saying about the portal, but it also has mistakes on it. Just today, a gentleman, I don't want to call his name, I can call him Mr. Ferguson. He calls me up, he says, look, he says, I got a map that you signed. I said, I signed it. I said, councilman normally don't sign maps. He said, yes, sir, you signed it. And he said, it's wrong. He said, I own that property, and there's 2 lots that shows my neighbor owns it. I said, okay, I'll go down there and look at it. Sure enough, 2009, I signed that map. And it was done by Barrier. And I said, well, your map is good. I said, well, what's the problem? He said, well, if you look on the portal, those 2 lots next to me shows my neighbor. And he said, that's mine, and it's on this map that I got in my hand you signed. I said, well, let me have it. I'll go to the clerk of court's office. I'll handle it for you. And it was on their end. And they said they got mistakes like that all the time, but it's nothing major. But when you're dealing with that much stuff and people coming in and out, and when you're filing, where you're not filing, you're bound to have that, you know. Yeah. I'm just saying you're going to still have mistakes no matter, but I think that's the map to use.
You would like to use the portal map?
Yes.
Thank you. Gary, Derek?
So the assessor's map is not 100% accurate, as we all know. However, it's probably the closest thing that we have in this parish to being accurate of every property out here, and ownership as well as lot lines, because it's kind of real world, real time. I will tell you, the zoning map, if it's the portals, the paper, what have you, it is a living document. As y'all pass ordinances and make those changes, it needs to be changed in real time. I can tell you from dealing with zoning and all the other parishes, it needs to be real time. It can't just wait once a year, because that's what people use to determine when they come before the planning department, when they come before or before they set up the meetings, or when they start looking at properties, when businesses or corporations or what have you start thinking about coming into the parish, they look at those kind of things for due diligence. So it needs to be updated pretty real time, whether it's monthly, weekly, every meeting, if an ordinance happens. And y'all need to make sure that y'all have someone assigned to do that maintenance on that map and make sure it's accurate.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So that's just my thoughts there, because people really are going to use these zoning maps to determine how they look at property, how they look at developments, how they look at where they want to be at in Livingston Parish in the future. If you got commercial corridors, that's where your businesses are going to start coming to. But if something's zoned different, then they may not come to that spot. So there's a lot of different things there, but it needs to be as real time as this council can make it, because that's what people are going to be, that's their property rights.
That sounds pretty good. So we got a lot more to talk about, but we're out of time.
All right.
So we're going to just continue this whole conversation next ordinance meeting, if y'all are okay with that.
We had a discussion about ordinance that we didn't send a recommendation for last week that we were going to talk about this week, which was if an approved development had to expand their retention pond in a manner that they had to give up lots.
Gary, that went on the agenda, man.
It was under it's other business.
Is it? I didn't see it.
You could put it under other business.
Well, it was, I mean, that's what we discussed it last week on the other business. I mean, we last week said we were going to discuss it tonight. Am I?
I mean, yeah, I mean,
I thought we said we were going to put it on the council agenda last meet and talk about it
So we
tonight.
didn't get a positive recommendation one way or the other to put on the council agenda. We talked about, addressing it again tonight. I mean, look.
I mean, we've discussed it. I'm good with it, but I don't know.
I mean, we can still discuss it under,
Do you want to introduce it tonight?
comment,
Well, I want to introduce it tonight and get it moving forward. I mean, we had an ordinance drafted last week and it came out.
talked about it under ordinance.
And then,
You don't have to have a recommendation.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can just talk about it under the ordinance. You don't have to have a recommendation.
yeah, I think we can introduce it.
Yeah. I mean, we could talk about it and introduce it. So,
That's the one from last, the one we talked about last week. Can you print us a set of those so when we get to ordinance committee, we can talk about those? And look, I'm going to email you another one on the zoning thing that we can talk about and see how that works. Matter of fact, I think I sent it to you. It's a picture, but you just have to see if you can print it.
motion to adjourn?
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Got a second? All in favor? Aye.
All right, ain't got much time.